is good, Sixers Nation? Welcome on in. This is Philly Take with RB. Episode 1 of the breakdown. Talking about last night's game. Preseason action, we're back underway. Sixers and Nets. We're talking about it all, man. It's going to be a good show. I'm excited, man. This one presented by Manscaped, leading provider of men's below-the-waist grooming products. Click their link down below. Check them out. Use code PhillyTake for 20% off and free shipping. Today, I'm joined by my guy, one of the best doing it, man, covering the Sixers on Heavy.com. Host of the Pick Swap Pod, the one and only, man, Sean Bernard. Sean, how you feeling, man? How you feeling, man?
Doing good. Feels great to have Sixers basketball back. I'm hyped to be joining you tonight, breaking it all down. It really did feel awesome to just see the on-court product. You know, we've been through the whole off-season ringer of predictions, trades, free agency, everything, and to just actually see basketball again feels really nice. Absolutely,
bro. What a game it was, by the way. You know, talk about spicing it up. I mean, we could come up here on a regular preseason game and we could talk and we could analyze, but they really put the Sixers up against the Nets. And not only that, Ben Simmons return and the Sixers come out and they smoke those boys in Brooklyn. Lot to break down. I'm excited for this season, man. Shoot, what a game. What a game. Like, I thought it was going to be a good game. I wasn't really worried about the outcome per se, but seeing the way that Tyrese Maxey came out, seeing the way that these bench guys came out, they were ready to go, right? And then, obviously no Joel Embiid, no Harden, no Tucker. You're like, okay, let's see what some of these role players can do. They come out here and they ball. And to be quite honest with you, just getting right into it, I'm being honest here. Like, the Sixers fans should feel very, very good after last night's game. Again, don't want to overreact. It's preseason. But you see these guys come out, essentially our backups, along with Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris, held the Brooklyn Nets starters, the full starting lineup, to, level to level, like toe to toe in the first half. A great first quarter, 42 points by the Sixers. The Nets come back, had a strong second, but most of our role players held their entire starting lineup and went toe to toe with them. And then our backups demolished the team, right? I mean, we don't have anything to complain about, do we?
Yeah, not really. It felt like the Nets were the team with their full starters out there, and it didn't feel that way. Like, you saw the Sixers taking control right from the beginning. To throw it to a little Jalen Hurts quote, how he said, "Be the thermostat, not the thermometer," and set the tone. And that's exactly what we saw with Tyrese Maxey, especially in that game. We saw him just picking up the pace, setting the tempo, and the whole Sixers team followed. So it was pretty crazy to see them just kind of come out swinging and set the tone early on, and the team followed. So it was great just to see everybody. It was cool to see a lot of the new guys in action. D'Anthony Melton, it was fun to watch. He didn't play his best, but I'm sure we'll get into all that. But overall, just like, I'm very impressed with what we saw from this. I thought the movement was very good. The willing shooting was very good. A lot of improvements there. And I'm excited to see this with the full squad, with Harden and Embiid adding to the court. We're only going to see more. So overall, just a very positive night last night.
Yeah, very positive outcome to start off the season. And again, it's preseason, but this is what you want to see. You want to see these guys fighting for spots. The Sixers still need to get down a couple roster spots by the start of the season. I thought there was good competition last night. I thought guys were battling. It was very interesting, and we definitely have a lot to get into for sure. Sixers take down the Nets 127-108. Once again, this is the breakdown, the more condensed, more relaxed type of thoughts the next day. We'll go through some film. We'll watch everything as it unfolds. Be sure you're following Sean and I on Twitter, Sean_Bernard1 and RB Philly Take. We're covering the games over there as well. We're bringing all the heat, man. We're bringing all the coverage all season long. Sixer Nation, let us know how you're feeling as well. Call us up, 508-924-3784. We'll get to some of those calls later on. We have to start with Tyrese Maxey. I mean, this kid was spectacular. I'm trying to find the words to describe his game. And I knew he was going to look good, right? I talked all off season, so did you, about this kid putting on weight, saying the right things, right? Everybody's been saying the right things, but when you get out on the court, it's another story. And Tyrese Maxey came out, and he did not waste any time. The first possession, he comes down, all confidence, pulls up and knocks down a three. He proceeds to do it again. He goes for the first 10 points for the team. I mean, I don't want to lose my mind yet, but Tyrese might look like a budding star already. Yeah. Already, man.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's impossible to set a ceiling for this kid at this point. Like, he just continues to blow by every expectation. And we're looking at a court that was shared with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons. And there's a real argument that Tyrese Maxey was the best player on the court last night. And just impressive stuff, 20 points in 14 minutes. I was also very impressed with his overall decision-making as a passer as well. That was an area of growth that I'm personally looking to see this year. And I saw some flashes even just last night. He talked a lot about how he's done some live read action in his offseason workout, just being focused on when to score, when to pass, when he sees cutters, things of that scenario. There was a play where he hit Matisse on a very tight bounce pass where Matisse kind of fumbled it, didn't get the catch, but that was a look that I was very impressed that we did not see him make in the past 2 years. He had 3 assists in the 14 minutes as well. So as a passer, that's extremely impressive and an area that when looking to his long-term future, I think that's very crucial in his growth. For the short term, with James Harden right beside him, obviously Harden's going to be the guy taking most of the playmaking responsibilities, and that frees Maxey up to be the scorer that we're seeing that he can be. The 3-point shot has really changed the trajectory of his game and raised him to that superstar status, because he's a guy who, it's so crazy when you think of Tyrese Maxey, you think of like the pace, the speed, the way he pushes tempo, and pair that with him being the third 3-point shooter in the league last year is pretty ridiculous. So it really is impossible just to contain excitement for this guy. And I have no idea how good he really can get.
He's still 21 years old, man. He's still 21. He hasn't even seen the beginning yet. And it's like, holy smokes, the way that he came out and approached the game. 20 points, 3 assists and a block in 14 minutes. Tyrese Maxey looking like the guy already. Let's not overreact, Sixer Nation, but my gosh, I mean, this guy was good. And you talked about the passing, which is something I want to hit on in just a minute. But you know what really stood out to me from Tyrese Maxey last night? It was the confidence. And I mean that in a couple ways. Number one, obviously coming right out of the gate, this is a high emotion type of environment. We know everything with Ben. We know everything going on. He comes right out and says, nah, look what I've done. Knocks down not 1, but 2 deep threes. And then going even forward, I just saw him attacking, and one of the things I wanted to see him improve on as a player this offseason is becoming smarter. Because you just talked about it, 42% from 3. I don't think he's going to take much of a statistical jump this year. I mean, it would be pretty hard given that what he did last year was kind of non-traditional. But I want to see him be a smarter player, limit the turnovers, be more confident, take his spots. And he comes right out. He was driving to the basket. I thought he did a great job penetrating that first level of defense. And really, I mean, I've been saying all offseason, it looks like he put on 20 pounds. I didn't really see Maxey get thrown around like he did last year. He was bumping into guys, using his shoulders, driving right to the basket, laying it off the glass. I thought Maxey was spectacular, and I loved his mindset last night.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And the muscle is legit on him too. Like, you can see it in the way he stands. I had a chance to see him at the Rumpf up at LaSalle earlier this summer, and I was pretty blown away by like just how physically it's notable. And that's like, we always hear the stories of guys like living in the weight room, putting on it, but to see Maxey just like truly like walk the walk as much as he talks the talk, and it's awesome to see. And like, that is pretty game changing for a guy who, only 6'2", has a little bit shorter in stature, with the finishing ability that he already has, to pair that with the ability to take contact. Like, I think we could see some growth in some like and ones by him. And I also think that there was a little bit of growth in just the whistle that he was getting last night. And obviously it's one game of preseason, don't want to read fully into it, but that does matter in the NBA, because you see like the stars get the calls, and that's just kind of how things go. You got to earn your mark. We've kind of, both you and I have stood up here and complained about the Maxey not getting calls in past years. And I think the tides are going to turn on that a little bit this year. And if Maxey, Embiid, and Harden are all getting the free throw line, I mean, A, games are going to take 6 hours, but B, that shows something for his maturity and how fast he's growing among league circles as well.
Yeah, 6 for 6 from the line. And I thought you said it perfectly to start off the show. Tyrese Maxey was the best player on the floor last night. It wasn't Kevin Durant. It wasn't Kyrie Irving. It wasn't Ben Simmons or anybody else. It was Tyrese Maxey. Like, he immediately came out and got his points. And I love that aggression, especially with guys not on the floor, because who knows? We may see games this year where James Harden might get a night off, or Embiid, right? Maybe you want to load manage a little bit and try to preserve these guys for the playoffs. Maxey said it doesn't matter. This can be my offense. And I think this is really going to spark a lot of conversation this entire year about what version of James Harden will we need if we get a version like this of Tyrese Maxey. So it's very, very interesting. Also a quote, Tyrese Maxey was asked, about James Harden. Obviously we saw them shaking hands on the sideline, and James was hyped for him. Everybody was happy. Tyrese Maxey says, quote, "It's great to have a big brother like that." What do you think about their connection, just their relationship, and really how much they've grown, over this offseason?
Yeah, it's awesome. They both have worked out together a decent bit this offseason, which is exactly what you hope to hear and love to see. It surprised me just how well-fitting these two are. And obviously the version of James Harden that shows up is the big question mark heading into this year. But being the guy that's able to take the playmaking responsibilities off Maxey's shoulders allows him to just flourish as the scorer. That's him at his most natural. His most natural version of playing basketball is when he's creating his own shot, whether it is by attacking the rim, setting up his jumpers, shooting three-pointers, whatever it is. Him just being able to focus on that has been awesome. And to your point about not necessarily needing James Harden to be the superstar, there's definitely going to be nights where James Harden can be the third, maybe even fourth best player on the Sixers, and they can still produce wins, which is awesome. And obviously we hope to see more of that. But I think it's very cool how quickly those two seem to have grown together. Just both of them being willing to pick up and move to where the other one is to go work out. That type of commitment goes a far way. So it's awesome. It seems like it's all sunshine and rainbows right now, and I hope that carries into the regular season.
Yeah, Maxey was a leader. He really set the tone for this team last night. They come out, they put up 42 points in the first quarter. I'm like, what is going on here? You got Thibault hitting threes. Melton hit a shot. You got Niang dropping threes. Isaiah Joe. Everybody was just getting in on that in the first quarter. And it was electric, man. Like, this is what we need. We need those guys to step up, play on both sides of the ball. They were creating space. And another thing, which we didn't really hit on yet, I mean, the defensive side of it. Like, I thought the rebounding and the defense last night, not even just the first quarter, but overall, I loved our approach. Especially it sticks out to me in the first quarter. Matisse Thybulle and DeAnthony Melton, we can say it right now, they didn't have really good offensive nights. Thybulle hit a shot early. I thought Melton was kind of forcing things, but, it's preseason. Let him go through the motions, try to get that down a little bit. But defensively, these guys had 6 steals. 6 steals in the first half combined, and they were picking the passing lanes. The Brooklyn Nets are supposed to be a better defensive team now with Ben Simmons. I thought the Sixers came out with that presence, and they said, nah, we're going to try to create transition points for ourselves by getting some steals, pushing it up the floor quick. That was a big emphasis point for this team last year. All we heard about was how slow we were and how much time it took us to get up the floor and our pace. I thought we had a different mentality, and that's kind of your goal, right? With, adding some of these pieces this offseason.
Yeah, definitely. For Melton specifically, I was very impressed defensively. I do think offensively he forced things a little bit, didn't play within his most natural role. And that all just comes with, more minutes on a new team. He'll settle in, find his role. But defensively, you can just tell the instincts are there. The 6'9" wingspan he flashed. Him and Thibault next to each other on the court is going to be some madness for opposing teams. And I loved just the prospect of, I think him and Maxey in a backcourt for stretches is going to be very fun as well. I like the way that he's willing to just hound, pick up full court. I'm excited for what Melton's going to fully settle in and be. I don't think last night was the best example of that. And B-Ball Paul, I also think played a massive role in how great the defense was. And that's been part of my pounding the table 4 minutes for Paul Reed is just how switchable he is, how long his arms are. And he's just madness on a court in a positive way. And he brought that out last night. I was happy to see him get the start over Montrezl Harrell. He's a guy who continues to keep his head down and work in the midst of the Sixers, just bringing in more talent to compete with him. And last night was a major step toward him, I think, earning that backup center role, which is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm definitely intrigued to hear your thoughts on that later on. I definitely want to get into the Paul Reed, Trez Harrell conversation because some people were satisfied. Some people were pissed. It was a preseason game, but definitely going to be interesting to hear your take on that. Now, one more thing with Tyrese Maxey. I want to pull up this clip. Shout out to Jackson Frank on Twitter. Just kind of talking about Tyrese Maxey's growth as a point guard. Like you said earlier, the facilitator part. Doc Rivers has been on record, and we're going to take a look at that clip later too, where, Doc Rivers had a conversation with James Harden. He was talking about being a facilitator, also a scorer. I think it's important to find that balance. The Sixers want to go 2-guard heavy with Joel Embiid. That's really the majority of the offense, right? The pick and roll. You have a lot of lethal combinations, but Tyrese Maxey, as I said earlier, needs to get better as a point guard, and that's what he's already doing. He's going through some of these things so early in his career where it's imagine what it's going to be like in 4 to 5 years. Now, in this play, Jackson Frank says, You know, he just talks about generating a high shot, and look how Maxey kind of reads the defense here. Let me mute that. Look how Maxey reads his defense and instantly the cut, and he finds him. You know, he instantly finds him right to the basket. Now, Thibault fumbled the bag a little bit, but still, I don't feel like we saw those sharp, quick reads like that all the time for Maxey. I think we've seen flashes of it, but I don't know. He just came out so much more polished than I expected in the first game. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. That was the play I was talking about earlier that really stood out to me as well. And I think it's just that kind of, like you said, quick decision making, being able to read a passing lane like that, because that is a high IQ pass. That's one of those that we see Harden make all the time. And as much as like these two are growing together, those are the type of nuances that you just pick up from playing with a player like James Harden. So that I was thrilled to see. Maxey is a guy who's been so careful and so great at taking care of the ball. Last year, he averaged 1.2 turnovers per game, which is pretty ridiculous considering the amount of time he played and the amount of time he spent with the ball in his hand. And in a weird way, I almost want to see the turnovers go up a little bit as like I want to see you trying stuff. I want to see you trying to make more plays, because it's kind of like if you compare it to like an NFL quarterback, like you obviously want the guy who never throws interceptions, but you also can't have the guy who's only throwing checkdowns all the time. Like you have to at least kind of go for it sometimes. And that's what I want to see with Maxey, is being willing to go out there and make that like crazy pass when the moment is right, obviously not getting reckless. But I thought last night, and this play specifically, was a very strong indicator of it. And if he can grow as a passer, in addition to everything we've seen as a scorer, like that is a franchise centerpiece max player right there. And that's the trajectory he certainly is on.
Yeah, he could kind of be the future beyond the future. It's weird because he can also be the present. You know, it's not normal where you get a guy like this where you're competing for a championship and it's, all right, you might have to be the second piece on some nights, maybe even the first option. But also, you know, if things don't go the way you want them to in 3 years, well, you're going to be with us for another 10 years, hopefully, right? So it's like, it's kind of a weird situation, but I just love the growth and development. And just speaking of what you said, like, I agree. I think he's already getting more aggressive. Like I saw him take some chances last night that I don't think I saw consistently last year. And like the one play, like I said, that just stands out to me is where he drives to the basket, kind of fades off to his left and uses his shoulder and just high arcs it off the glass. Like that's just, those are just the progressions you go through as a young guard. And I mean, if we can get this consistently, who knows what he can be this year? I mean, again, statistically, it's hard when you have Joel Embiid, when you have James Harden, but just as a player, like this team can be really good on offense.
Yeah, definitely. And I still think there's going to be some statistical strides forward. Like it's hard. He's got a pretty high bar that he's already trying to reach, but I think he's going to be a 20+ point per game scorer this year in year 3. I think we're going to see that type of leap from him. I think he's probably going to outscore Harden on a decent amount of nights just because that's how offensively talented he is. And we see Harden being more naturally just a playmaker at this stage in his career, and just the high IQ of his willingness to set up Maxey. His catch and shoot numbers went through the roof with Harden. His points per game increased next to Harden. So I think this is all just great news, this growing together. And a lot of it is I don't think Maxey's fully figured out how good he is yet. So once that kind of clicks in his head that he really is the level of superstar that we're seeing from a talent perspective, it's kind of scary hours coming in Philadelphia.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. Shout out to everybody in here, man. 200 in the chat. Hit the like button for your boys, man. Hit the like button. Talking with Sean Bernard, one of the best doing it, man. Before we continue to talk about this Sixers team, which I'm very, very excited to continually break down, we have to talk about the elephant in the room for a few brief moments, and that is Ben Simmons. I was streaming the game last night, and, you know, I feel like I just tell the truth on this guy all the time. Like, I mean, it's not hard to see as a Sixers fan, am I right? Like, Steve Nash, there he is right there on the screen. You know, over the last couple of weeks, I've heard multiple times from Steve Nash. He's come out and say, I love his game. I don't need him to be anything different. And you know what it looked like to me last night? It looked like the same old guy. It looked like he didn't do anything to improve. He goes to the line. He misses 2 free throws. This clip right here I have pulled up where George Niang clamps him. He tries a little midi fade away, and he misses by 4 feet to the right. Now, again, he's not our problem anymore, and I'm very happy about that. But you know what I saw last night? Honestly, I saw the Sixers offense from a couple years ago where Seth Curry's running around, dribble handoffs, and Ben has his back to the basket at the high post, and everybody else just looks a little bit confused. And he's trying to get Joe Harris. He's trying to feed him. Obviously, Seth Curry did not play last night. But I just saw the same old thing, and I love it. I love it. I mean, it's not our problem anymore, but it's like, wow, And, despite having Kyrie Irving, despite having Kevin Durant, it doesn't matter when you have a guy that kind of stints the offense. And you know what's the funniest part is that come playoff time, I don't see it being any different. I don't see them like I saw all I needed to see. The Sixers bench players with Maxey and Tobias held that team. They went toe to toe with them in the first half. And then by the time we got to halftime, like, who cares anymore, right? But it's just like, yo, like, I'm not scared of that team. I'm not scared of them at all. We've been saying this. I'm not scared of them. Come on, man.
Yeah, I think he's in a better situation for him stylistically, but the weaknesses in his game are just too massive to overcome to some extent, and they get magnified in the postseason. I mean, we've been through this so many times with the Sixers and like just trying to think of obscure ways to make it work and make it fit. But in the reality of it is there's basic basketball skills that you just have to be able to do. And for a player as ball dominant as Ben Simmons, there has to be some threat of some scoring ability. I know he ended with 6 last night. The 2 missed free throws once again was like just a clear evidence of a guy like still so deep in his own head on a basketball perspective that like if until you can like get through those demons, you're just not going to be able to contribute to your team in a winning way. And like looking at him next to Kevin Durant and Kyrie, this is 3 guys that are extremely ball dominant, and they like. Yeah. I just can't wait to see how this plays out. It feels like the Nets for several years now have just been a team loaded with talent and just with no mindset of how the pieces actually fit together. Mm-hmm. It feels really great to not have the Ben Simmons issue and being worried about it. And even like this play here, like no disrespect to Georges Niang, but that is a matchup that Ben Simmons should be like salivating that I can take this guy.
He has no game around the rim. He never has.
It is impressive the lack of touch he has for a guy his size, like around the rim. And even like when we talk about, not to compare him to Maxey because there's been plenty of that, but just look at the way Maxey like artfully will attack a guy and just find a way to lay it up. Ben is always the opposite. For a guy so much bigger than Maxey, he's a guy who's fading away, afraid of the contact, and kind of bricking it off. Like the lack of touch and the night and day difference. So it feels very good for the Ben Simmons concerns to not be our issue anymore.
2 quick things on this. Number one, I mean, Sean, we can agree, right? If it's you or I or anybody else, like the perfect time to come out here and shut up the narrative is in preseason. I know it's against the Sixers. There's a lot of, emotion and all that, I guess. But the time to come out and just let a 3-pointer fly would be yesterday, right? Like, get all of it off your shoulders. I'm back. It's been 2 years. I'm back and ready to go. But I feel like he missed that shot. And it was like, it reminds me of that Grizzlies game where he missed that 3 terribly and said, I'm not doing it ever again. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that too. And I will say there was a part of me that was like, not concerned, but just, I guess, curious, like what version of this guy is going to show up, what really is. And to some extent, I guess it's a little reassuring. It's like, nope, that's still the same guy that he thought he was. But it's like, from a just personal perspective, like I feel like there has to be like, the desire to grow. And even as recently as going on like the JJ Redick podcast and talking about like, I need to shoot threes and this kind of thing. Yeah. Like whatever. It's like, just do it. Like, and like you said, preseason against the Sixers, this was a perfect opportunity for him to just reset the narrative on him, start writing his own story here, but he let it slip away. And it's very clear it's the same guy.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to say is, you hit on a very good point there. It was very interesting to me watching him bring the ball down the floor every possession. And I think that'll be crucial, especially as the Nets go on with their season. People think they're going to stack up and be a competitor in the East. Well, then we have to keep an eye on them, right? And it was weird. Like, and I called it. As soon as he went out of the game, I said the Nets are going to go on a run. That's when they started up an 11-0 run. They came back, ended up tying it up and all that good stuff. But it was so weird how Kyrie Irving was not running the point. It was essentially Ben Simmons. And it seemed like they didn't know how to figure it out yet. They didn't know what to do. And that's what we've said before. Like, you have him on the floor who doesn't shoot, but then you have a ball dominant player like Kyrie, like KD. Like, how do you make that fit? I don't think it's going to be a good fit, but that's just me.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen like this just kind of renaissance of positionless basketball, and that's like the new obsession from teams all over. But Ben Simmons kind of embodies like the negative side of positionless basketball, because he's positionless in the way of like there isn't a true role that he excels with. Like, yes, he's brilliant with the ball. He can make some really nice decisions, especially in transition, stuff like that. But when you get in like a half court setting, you can either hide him in the dunker spot, which the Sixers did plenty of, and you're really just kind of clogging up space. And now, granted, that was a bigger detriment to the Sixers because of Embiid and the post dominant player that he is. But you're still just kind of taking up that space if you throw him there with the Nets. And if you're putting him on ball, which is kind of what you want because of he is a good decision maker, a good ball handler, you're taking it out of your two best players' hands in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie is not a guy who does his off-ball work and goes and creates separation. For the most part, both these guys are very isolation in their nature and would rather take a guy off a dribble. And also, there's been the talks about playing Ben at the 5. Like, yes, he has the size and could be like the get a rebound and push it, but he just completely lacks the physicality to match up with like any big man and across the NBA. And even if it is like your small ball version that you're not doing a full stent, like you play a guy like Bam Adebayo or basically any center that you name, like not even Joel, who's obviously the extreme example here. It's just like Ben does not like, he's never a guy who goes up and gets those contested rebounds. He'll get the ones because he's big, but it's just like there isn't a clean fit for him no matter who you surround him with.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out for sure. Going even forward, though, I mean, a lot of the Sixers players played well last night. And once again, shout out to everybody in the chat. Hit the thumbs up button. We'll take your calls in a little while. Hit that subscribe button, man. I mean, the Sixers put up 127. You know, again, it's preseason. A lot of guys were getting minutes. I was surprised to see all the dudes getting minutes. We ended up getting some Seabass action. We got some Julian Champagny. I was pleasantly surprised with Champagny. He came out, with a laser shot. We saw Jaden Springer. I thought his on-ball defense was decent, right? We saw Charlie Brown. We saw everybody in the rotation. But who stood out to you last night? Was there a guy you were looking for, a certain matchup? Who really stood out in a good way or a bad way? And you were like, okay, that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, I'll give the shout out to Montrezl Harrell here. And granted, I know he fouled out in 12 minutes, which isn't the best thing. But for what he did in the on-court, he's just kind of like, I think him and B-Ball Paul are going to be an excellent pairing as like a Bash Brothers and kind of offensive and defensive versions of each other. And like even in the minimal preseason, like we saw him smack the guy's hand away when he tried to help him up. We saw him screaming in a guy's face, talking after a dunk. So there's just like the intensity that he brings, the rim rocking dunks that he brings. I think there's plenty more offensively that there's going to be unlocked with Harrell, more with the pick and roll I would like to see. And just as an isolation creator, like we've never had a backup center that you can just kind of give the ball to and go get a bucket. And Montrez is capable of doing that. So I think that's going to continue to grow. I was happy with what he brought. I also think him and B-Ball Paul could potentially play together a little bit. And I think that was one of my takeaways from last night is like kind of envisioning that and seeing that. I think that could work from an aspect, and that would be nightmares for opposing teams. So I'll give it to Montrezl Harrell as my first positive takeaway. Overall, not a lot of negatives from me.
Honestly, yeah. Trez, 10 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in 12 minutes. The fact that he got fouled out in a preseason game, like that was incredible in the third quarter. Now, I feel like the refs might have a target on his back this year, but, when we signed Harrell, all the things that you just said were exactly why I felt this was such a good signing, and it came at the right time. He kind of fell into your lap. I don't think Trez is a minimum player. I had Austin Krell on last week, and he was saying the same thing. Like, people were completely overreacting, just like they did with Drummond, just like they did with Dwight. I mean, for his sakes, like, he's a backup, and he was able to do that in just a little sample size. And like you said, all the intangible stuff, like the energy, get out of my face, like it's just being that dog, being one of them that we need and that we have desperately needed. I thought his game was great, and Trez was a big positive for me.
Yeah, definitely. And the Trez signing, there's kind of two different conversations. The pure addition itself, I don't think anyone should have an issue with. It's very clear that he makes this team better, is a flavor of player the Sixers didn't have, and is really a higher caliber backup big than that. Not that he is a traditional big, but just in that role, a better quality player than any of these guys that they listed in the Dwight Howards, the Andre Drummonds, the DeAndre Jordan, so on and so forth. The other side of the conversation is like how Doc Rivers will utilize him, and that's where I think all the negative perceptions come from, because there is clear evidence of like 3 years ago him playing Trez way too much in the playoffs that blew a 3-1 lead during their time with the Clippers against Jokic, and those demons are still floating in everyone's head. So it's a little bit of two different conversations to me. Like the Trez signing for sure is a 10 out of 10. If you will use properly is a different conversation. But as far as a regular season innings eater guy who's going to produce, I love him on this Sixers team. And I think he's going to be a fan favorite extremely quickly.
I agree. And I think, you're in a spot where you're trying to win a championship. Like you're all in. The chips are all in you have to continue to build with experience. And it's nice seeing some of these guys. I thought Bassey played pretty well too. I mean, his stat line, 4 points and 9 rebounds. I thought Bassey played well in his minutes. Again, it was against the bottom of the rotation, but I like the competition. And I think Paul Reed, like you said, can eat up minutes. Trez can do the same thing. I don't know who Doc's going to favor. I feel like it'll be Montrez, but if Paul Reed shows that energy like he did last night on both sides, I mean, he was going up, he was grabbing boards. Paul Reed finishes with 10 points, 5 rebounds. It was his energy, though. The one question mark I have that I can't let it get past me this year, because I feel like we have to hold this team and these players to really high expectations, is what will Paul Reed's shot look like? Will he ever be able to shoot? I saw some warm-ups of him. It looked the same, which is not promising to me. But I wish I could take the motor in Paul Reed and put it in some of these other guys, because he does some of the dirty work. And if Paul Reed can continue to develop his offensive game, like you just said, Trez is able to actually get us a bucket. I don't think we've had that so consistently, and I think it'll make for great competition for sure. But Paul's going to have to do a little more in my books, and probably Doc Rivers' books, to get consistent minutes on his team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how it shakes out. One of, I think, the surprise rumblings coming out of Sixers camp, and Keith Pompey just wrote in an article kind of stating it all out, that like B-Ball Paul looks to have the inside track on the backup jog as of now. And now, granted, part of that, I'm sure, is Montrez is a little bit late to the game and coming to the Sixers and everything that comes with it. And it's going to be a throughout the season competition thing, match by matchup basis. But I'm like, I cannot be more proud of Paul's mindset on everything too, because you just see like, he really has been continually trying to push down in the mud and just keeps his head down, grinds, and he has gotten better. Like there's areas of his game where he's definitely improved from when he first came in the NBA. And even like there was a play last night that to me like pinpointed the value I see in B-Ball Paul. Is it was a pick and roll they ran against him. He went into drop coverage. They tried to play the bounce pass in between, and he just picked it off and started a fast break down the other way. And that's like you don't see that from very few big men, and Joel is not even a guy capable of doing that. So it's like, to see a player as versatile as he is with the hands that he does and just the madness he creates, there's value in that. And there's some sort of role for him on this roster. And as far as the shooting, I know it doesn't look pretty, but there still will always be in my head. Like he shot 45% from 3 at this G League, his rookie year, his MVP of the G League year. So there's a part of me that still believes in the shot, even if it isn't the most good looking shot in the world.
Look, man, I hope and pray he does. I think Reed would be a great piece, especially he's not on a big contract. He's still young in his career. Even Bassey showed me some potential. I think having that competition again between those high motor guys is very good for this team. I'm excited to see what it looks like next game. Can they give us a consistent bunch? And that kind of takes me to one of my positive takeaways, which was actually Furkan Korkmaz. Yes, I know it's crazy. In 2022, I'm saying Furkan Korkmaz was my positive takeaway, but he looked really good. And if you remember last year, for a bunch of games to begin the season, Furkan did look really good. It was like, okay, he finally took that next step. And when I look at guys like Furkan, when I look at guys like Shake Milton, to me, this is the last limb. This is the last chance. We're on championship mode. These guys are first round picks, early second round picks. You have to come out here and show your worth. And honestly, I didn't see much from Shake Milton last night. I hope we can see more of a sample from him and see what he can do. But I thought Furkan was incredible. He finishes with 15 points, knocks down a couple threes, 6 for 12 from the field. And Furkan talked recently about how last year he was going through injury things and he couldn't really feel his thumb and he had some problems there. I just need it consistently. If we can get, for example, this Furkan, or if we can get that Matisse who shot a 3 early on in the game, or we can get some production from an Isaiah Joe, for example, who I thought played pretty well. Imagine what this team can be. We've needed that depth. We've gotten to the playoffs, and our bench has been awful the last couple of years. We need guys to step up, and we need guys to hit shots. And I thought Furkan, even taking the initiative, taking the ball in the second half, driving it to the hoop. Like we saw Euro Furk last night in the third quarter. He was single-handedly taking this team to another level. Like when everybody else went out, the Nets were crawling back into it. Furkan said, okay, the Sixers went on like a 14-2 run, whatever it was. And he just pulled the game away. I was impressed with Furkan.
Yeah, definitely. And I was surprised when he came back from media day and talked about that. He said he had some nerve damage in his hand last year that originated around the All-Star break. And first off, credit to him for just playing through it, not really saying anything. And that is, to me, more than a fair excuse for a guy that shot 23% from 3 following the All-Star break. So you never want to see that thing. He said he went through 2 months of rehab this offseason to to get feeling back in his hands, really. So with him fully healthy, he looked like a whole different player last night. And he's a guy that, like, the need for the skill set of Furkan is still very clearly on the Sixers team. And if he can be that player is the bigger question. The bottom of the roster, there's so much competition, and they still have 17 guys for 15 roster spots. They're going to have to either cut to or form some sort of trade to get down to the 15-man minimum ahead of the regular season. So I still would not rule out some sort of package that's built around like a 3-for-1 or 3-for-2 or some sort of trade to clear things out. And Furkan's a name, unfortunately, I could see popping that if that's the case. But I was pretty proud of how he played last night. He looked way more comfortable, and he feels like a guy playing with like nothing to lose, which is awesome. That's the mindset you want at this stage in his career and obviously in the situation he's in.
Absolutely, man. When we get back in a second, I want to talk about DeAnthony Melton because a lot of Sixers fans have been high on him. I thought he was forcing shots. We'll talk about his game, Thibault. Also, I want to get Sean's take on who he believes will end up getting cut from the roster because there's a lot of chatter about it. We saw a little preview last night. I still think we're going to go through the next couple games, but I mean, I'm starting to formulate a little bit based on what I saw yesterday because we saw some of the G League guys. We saw, some of the end of the role players that, I'll say didn't look too good. But let us know in the chat, who do you think ends up getting cut? Which two players will go? Will there be a potential trade or something of that sort? Once again, hit the like button, 330 in the chat. Shout out to everybody in here. Got to take a quick second to tell you guys about Manscaped. Shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. Leading provider of below-the-waist men's grooming products. Manscaped has you covered. All my fellas out there, man, go check out the Performance Package 4.0, the Weed Whacker, man, the ear and nose hair trimmer, the Manscaped Crop Reviver, the Crop Toner, all that stuff, man, the ball deodorant, and most importantly, the Lawnmower 4.0. Fellas, go get yourselves one of those, man. They're the best in the game doing it. Skin-safe technology, cutting-edge ceramic blade, and just helping you protect the jewels, man, and take it to the next level. We're getting to the winter time. We're getting, it's getting cold outside, man. You got to protect the jewels and make sure you don't hit the roots, man. Your ladies will thank you, and it's about that time, man. So shout out to Manscaped. Click the link down below in the description. Use promo code PhillyTake for 20% off and free shipping. Shout out to Manscaped, man. All right, back into it. And also call us up, man. 508-924-3784. On the phone lines, man. Call us up. What do you guys think about this game yesterday? Are we done talking about Ben Simmons for the season? Are the Nets scary? What do the Sixers look like? How do you feel? Do you feel any different about them last night? Let us know. Also, I want to go back to Sean, man. Who do you think's going to get cut? Give us your ultimatum after one preseason game. Ultra reactionary. Let us know.
I think, unfortunately, it's going to be Trevelin Queen and Charles Bassey, which is a bummer because I do think both these guys are NBA talents, even though this might not be the place for them. For Bassey specifically, I think the Harrell signing kind of indicated that the Sixers didn't believe that he was ready. And like you said before this, like the Sixers' focus has to be on championship or bust. Like we're not really in the time frame to be developing another backup big. And as much as Bassey, like I said, I do believe is an NBA guy. He has the skill set, has the frame. He's not a can't miss guy in the way that, like, if you cut him, you're missing out on the next best thing. And I think he'll find a spot to land, but you can find another Charles Bassey if you really need to. So I think that's going to be the one spot. And for Trevelin Queen, this breaks my heart because I am a Trevelin Queen believer. He's been a guy, like I shouted out going into the offseason that if there's any sort of spot, let's give him a chance. I watched him at the Delaware Bluecoats, the final where with the Rockets organization, he beat them. He dropped 40 on the Delaware Bluecoats head and then stomped on the logo to start a whole fight. So I was like, this is my guy right here. And then I was thrilled when they brought him in. But unfortunately, the way that I think the cards are shaking out, those two I do see at the bottom of the roster. I do hope that there's some sort of trade that manifests itself where maybe the Sixers flip like maybe a Furkan, Matisse, and Shake Milton for like another key role player and then add those guys at the bottom. That would be my ideal, but I think if it comes down to cuts, it's Queen and Bassey. You're
talking my language, man. You're talking my language. People, I bring up some of these different bench guys are like, no. Like, I would certainly take another experienced bench player right now on this team. But, I mean, I don't have anything to add. I mean, I agree. I think it's going to be Trev Queen, Charles Bassey. I was very scared at one point that it would be Isaiah Joe. But Isaiah Joe did come in the game fairly early yesterday. He went out. He hit some of his shots. He's telling Doc Rivers, you can't get rid of me. You can't get rid of me. I'm third year in the league. my shot's getting better. I can defend as well. And it feels like in some of the opportunity last year when he got a chance, he hit some shots. Like, he did his thing, and he can only get better. Isaiah Joe had 9 points yesterday. But, yeah, man, Trev Queen's a good story. He's a really good story. But I don't know. He was forcing the issue a little bit. I hope he's okay as well. I know he went down, had a little bit of an injury there, but hopefully he's okay. I thought Bassey was solid. But the thing is, you have Paul Reed, who has experience now in the playoffs last year. You have Montrezl Harrell, who obviously Doc is going to keep on his team. Bassey might be the odd man out. But if I had to give a bold take, don't ever underestimate Daryl Morey. You know, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I don't know how you're feeling about Jaden Springer. I don't feel like he fits his team one bit. I don't feel like his development fits his team one bit. So you never know. You never know.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And my issue with Springer is we still don't know what position this guy can play. Like, he's not if he can improve in either his ball handling or shooting, there's a role for him. His defense is there. His defense is NBA ready. He has an NBA ready body. He's a guy that can match up with some elite perimeter guards. Like, I really do believe that right now. But offensively, he just looks pretty lost out there. He plays pretty much like a power forward in a guard's body in a way that's pretty bizarre to actually watch. And even at the G League level, he shot 23% from three last year, and that's just not going to cut it in an NBA fashion. And the ball handling especially concerns me. Like, you have to either be able to be a lead guard or be a guy that can catch and shoot. And right now he doesn't either. He's still, in the long run, I think is going to turn out to be a fine player. But I agree. I don't think it matches the timeline. And the Sixers obviously have a first-round pick invested in him. That's the reason I think he sticks, is just because of the long-term belief. And I do see the player that he could be in there. But if there's a trade on the market, if there's somebody that's interested in Jaden Springer, if he goes to maybe like a Houston Rockets or a team that isn't as pressing to win, I think that makes much more sense and something that Morey should at least sniff around on. Yeah,
for sure. And given his contract, you know he's not going to get cut. But still, I mean, you never know. He did show me a little bit yesterday, especially that on-ball pressure. We've been hearing about it in training camp. I thought he was a little bit impressive on the defensive side. I think it's there. I see the potential. I just don't know about the window, with this Sixers team. Before we hit the phone lines, once again, call us up 508-924-3784. What did you think about DeAnthony Melton? He's a guy that I've been sitting here saying, all right, let me see it in action, and he was forcing the issue a little bit. He was missing his shots. It seemed like he was trying to get that groove going where he could get in a rhythm a little bit. He just never found it last night. But I actually liked his confidence a little bit. I like the fact that he's willing to take 10 shots, take 12 shots, even when they're not dropping. He just kept attacking. What do you think about DeAnthony Melton?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's been a favorite of mine since he came in the league. I loved watching him with the Grizzlies. He kind of fell out of good faith with the Grizzlies with the addition of Zaire Williamson, who is a younger player with a little bit more potential. And Melton is kind of similar to a lot of guys that they had there, but he's very different from the guys that the Sixers have had in the way that he is a two-way guy. I agree. I think he tried to force it a little bit too much last night, tried to really assert himself. I think he took on the Harden, Embiid, and Tucker and House sitting out on himself to kind of fill that role. And in one regard, it's like, slow down a little bit and you'll find yourself. But on the other, it's a little bit refreshing to me to see a guy be willing to just try and shoot himself through things. So I was happy to see that. Defense is where his bread is going to be buttered. That's where he kind of really makes his impact. And I love the fact it reminds me a little bit of, in a very different way, but of TJ McConnell, when you would throw him out there as a changeup with a guy that would just pick him up 94 feet the whole court and be willing to do that. DeAnthony Melton will do that for stretches, and that's a cool thing to just have in the weapon box, be able to throw out once in a while. And I do think he will comfortably find his role with this team. I think he tried to do a little bit too much last night at day one in the preseason, but he's a good addition to this team for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, beginning of the game, he brought that intensity right away. He helped create some transition points. Again, he had 3 steals. Thibault had 3. He did go 2 for 10 on the offensive side, but he's only going to improve from here on. Just let him get settled a little bit. And lastly, Champagnie as well. Again, I mentioned him earlier. I mean, he had 15 points, hit a couple threes. I don't know. We haven't heard much about him. He'll probably be in the G League, but he looked a little bit impressive to me. Yeah, a night and day difference from the Julian Champagnie we saw in Summer League. He was a guy that I was very disappointed in after Summer League. His rep is kind of as a 3-and-D shooter, specifically as a shooter. And coming out of Summer League, he shot the ball at a very poor clip, and he completely lost confidence with it. So it was pretty promising to see him just like come back, clean slate, and let it fly last night. And he saw success. So he's going to be on the two-way deal this year, him and Charlie Brown Jr. So we'll definitely be more G League than NBA, but a guy that's worth keeping an eye on at least.
Yeah, for sure, man. Call us up, 508-924-3784. Let us know, what do you think about Jaden Springer, about DeAnthony Melton, about some of these guys? Who do you think is going to make the team? What were your initial thoughts? Overall, man, this was a great game. We have a couple more in preseason, then we really get into it. And then we really get to that point where it's like, okay, we need to produce. Where are you at with the team right now in general? Like, just an overarching perspective. What can the roof be this year? How high can the ceiling go for this Sixers team? What are your expectations in terms of we have to get to this point this year?
Yeah, the ceiling's absolutely a championship. As far as what we would consider the bottom line for me is you have to get past the second round. You have to at least make it to an Eastern Conference Finals this year. And I think that has to be the bar for this Sixers team. But championship is definitely within the realm of question. I'm very excited to see this team with Harden and Embiid on the court. Like, we're talking about all these positive things, and we still haven't seen our two superstars take the court. So I'm curious to see how that looks in a regular season fashion. I'm not ready to start planning a parade yet, but I'm pretty encouraged from what I see. I also, throughout the offseason, I've pretty consistently had the Sixers ranked as my number 3 team in the East. I do think they leapfrog above the Celtics because of the Ime Udoka, obviously the situation there, the coaching issue. Obviously a terrible situation that is very weird and how it's all going down, but that hurts the Celtics in a major way. And he's a coach that deserves a ton of credit for helping them turn around last year. So without that, I do think the Sixers leapfrog them in the East. And as long as you're in that mix for the best teams, like, anything can happen if you're peaking at the right time towards playoffs. So I think they did all the right things by building up the bench, providing more depth than we've seen around the Joel Embiid era team ever. And I'm thrilled to see what this is actually going to look like.
Yeah, I have us as number 2. I think we're the number 2 team in the East this year. I think we're going to win 54 games. This is our chance, in my opinion. Like, this is the most polished roster that we have put around Joel Embiid, and having that whole training camp, having the whole offseason to finally go through this, I'm really excited, but I have to hold the expectations high. I know it's early, know it's premature, but man, it's like we have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals in my books, or else major change must be made. Like, I don't see a world where we lose in the second round again and everything is okay. Like, this is the year. Like, it has to happen. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As much as there's been pressure on James Harden, that's a lot that's been talked about this offseason, is what version of him showing up. I would argue Doc Rivers has as much, if not more, pressure on him going into this year. Because when you look at the postseason exits, like, the reason for keeping Doc Rivers is almost like he hasn't truly messed it up. Like, there's reasons for the losses. If you look at the Hawks series, obviously Ben Simmons caught the brunt of that because of the dunk and everything else that occurred in that series, and him just really just not looking like himself out there. Look at last year, and it was the Embiid injury that ultimately sunk this team. Him missing the first 2 games of that Heat series changed everything. And if he's there from the beginning, it's a completely different story. Looking at this year, we now have all the tools put together, and it's on Doc Rivers' shoulders to put it together in the right way and make sure that it's ready for the regular season success and into the postseason. So I would consider Doc Rivers with a guy with the most pressure on him going into this year. And I agree. If it's not past the second round, he's going to be packing next year.
Yeah, man. It's a big type of prove it season for the Sixers, man. Like, this is where it's at. You have all the pieces. We know the story. We know the history. I mean, you got to get there. You got to get there. But speaking of Doc Rivers, I want to pull up this clip as well from earlier. He was on NBA Today, and he was talking about James Harden and essentially what he needs to see from James Harden. And we saw during the training camp week, that whole conversation. I thought that was a great practice, by the way, just getting like that in-depth look at everything. But here's what Doc Rivers essentially had to say. So he says he needs James Harden to be the James Harden, the scorer. And let's go ahead and listen to this clip here.
I just didn't want James because I think we've talked so much about him being a facilitator. We even started to show off. But I need him to be James Harden too. If I had to combine, I would say a scoring Magic Johnson. I don't know. You guys come up with something. But that's what I want him to be. I don't want him to think that he's I want him to be a James Harden. But in that, I want him to also be the facilitator of this basketball team too. So in a lot of ways, his role is growing bigger for our team. And I just want him to keep thinking, do both.
So a scorer and a facilitator, would you agree with that? Because I think that was spot on. Like, the big thing this year is picking your spots, right? You have an emerging Maxey. You got to fit Tobias into this equation. We know Joel. James needs to pick his spots. Some nights we may need a little flashback of Harden, but I think he just needs to be efficient. That's the word I've been using the whole offseason. You have to be efficient. You have to be the guy that maybe we saw in Brooklyn, the guy that can give you 12 dimes, 14 dimes, that can pick his spots and can play off of the others as well. And we saw that practice where, they were going back and forth, and he said, it's not just me, it's the pressure I create on the defense. Like, I open up Maxey, I open up Joe. I thought that just showed like a really high intelligent IQ level from James Harden. It just shows like his experience and how smart of a player he is. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Doc's been pretty spot on with his management of Harden, especially that interview that was shown from that practice where they were mic'd up and him talking through that back and forth was awesome. What makes James Harden so special is he's so dynamic as both a scorer and a playmaker in a way that very few players are. He's one of only 7 players of all time to lead the league in scoring and assists in separate years. So that type of magnitude is what makes him special, but he needs to rekindle a little bit of that just scoring ability, because we talked about this since the Ben Simmons days, is there's that like section of the Sixers offense where there needs to be like a go get a bucket moment. And that has to come between the combination of Harden and Maxey. And as great as it is to like, we're seeing the rising star with Maxey, at the end of the day, like 21-year-olds don't win you championships. You need your superstars. You need your veteran guys to come in when crunch time is there. So that's what we're hoping for from Harden. I think he's capable of it. We're not asking him to do like too much. His main role is still going to be a facilitator, but he does still have to have that ability to just one-on-one create. He has to have like some sort of shake that he was missing last year. And that's going to be kind of the make or break factor for if he is truly like the quote unquote back that we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. And I was a big advocate for, let's give him a shot, because I felt like he showed it to us. He showed us a sample of what he could do when he came here. Like, him and Joel Embiid had statistically the best pick and roll in the league. And that was in a small sample size. And that's kind of just getting thrown into the fire. Now you have a whole off season to kind of get your body right to go through things. And, I was saying, the guy looked hurt to me. He did. Now I'm not absolving everything from him. He did play bad. There were games where he was awful. He needed to play much better and just show up. But if it clicks, like you just said, and think about what Maxey could be. I saw just a little bit already in that game last night where I'm like he's different again. Like he's a little bit different again. Like he can turn it on. So when I think about what James Harden we need, it's just the guy that meshes everything together, but can also add that scoring element. Not to bring it full circle here, but essentially what we never got that we wanted so bad from Ben Simmons, just to not only be able to put everything together, but go get yours when you need to. And if Harden is the deal this season, if he is healthy, I don't see any reason why this team cannot be unstoppable on the offensive end. They've upgraded their defense. I think they could be a top 5 defensive team. But offensively, when you got to account for Joel Embiid, which is hard enough as it is, Tyrese Maxey, James Harden, Tobias, now PJ Tucker, who can knock down some threes. I don't know. It's scary to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's also like, to Harden's credit, we'll give him like, we've talked so much about what a down year and how much there's been disappointment for a guy that still averaged like 21, 10 and a half, and 7. So that is a credit to just the caliber of superstar he is, that is the case. And I also think there's an aspect of James Harden. We've seen this throughout his passes. When he's locked in and cares, like that shows in his play. And when he's not, that also shows in his play. And for the first half of the season with Brooklyn, and I do think there are justifiable complaints with his time in Brooklyn. Like he went to the Nets because he was sick of being the only guy in Houston. And then when he got to the Nets, essentially it was just, Kyrie never showing up. Kevin Durant was hurt half the time. And it was the same situation with worse guys around him. He didn't have guys to optimize him. He pretty much had a bunch of minimum players with Kyrie, KD, and himself taking up the rest of the salary cap. So he kind of got sick of it when it was that and saw him let himself go. And then when he came to the Sixers, I do think he was locked in. He cared again, but you couldn't just snap himself back into like game shape the way he could when he was younger. So I think with a full offseason, with that same level of passion, with the desire to actually be that guy again, this is the first time we've seen James Harden back against the wall in many years. So I'm excited to see his motivation to kind of prove people wrong. And I think he's going to do it.
That's a really good point too. And when I think about this offseason and especially this upcoming one, James Harden is also betting on himself. He's betting on himself also for the betterment of the team, which again shows selflessness there. But I mean, he's got to have a good year if he wants to extend his career, if he wants to get another contract. Not just him. Thibault, for example, needs, if he wants a contract extension, he's got there's just many players that have, like you said, they're back to the wall. They're building that pressure. And I think for once we have that mounting pressure where it's like, all right, let's see how you respond to it. It's not like next year can come and we're going to have the same exact team and everything's going to be fine. No, I think that pressure's good though. I think that's what makes good from great. And, even with Doc Rivers, Doc has the pressure. He's blown 3-1 leads. And, this is now you have to put it all together. And I think that element of pressure is something that we haven't had to this degree. I'm not saying we haven't had pressure. What I'm saying is everybody's betting on themselves, both individually and for the team. And I just think that atmosphere will either make everyone better or it'll show where we just can't,
Yeah, definitely. There's a new urgency around the franchise. We've lived through the process here as we've waited for things to grow. And it's now to the point where our chips are kind of in the middle. This is the team we've got. These are the guys we got. Joel Embiid is the superstar that we've built around. Now let's make it happen on the court. And Harden's been a guy that's going to be a key factor in what level of team this can be this year. But I do like that aspect of all these guys having something to bring them on in addition to team success. And that's a great thing. Pressure brings out the best in a lot of guys. And I hope that's the case with Harden and the rest of the team.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If you want to call us up, give us some thoughts, 508-924-3784. Give us some thoughts on the game. I want to kind of end off going to the last segment by just asking you, by the way, this has been great. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Hit that like button, man. Be sure you're checking Sean out on all the things that he does as well. What are you looking for next game? Because now we got this big game out of the way. Not big game, but all the headlines and the storylines. Now we can get down to business a little bit. And we have a couple more. Who are you looking for to step up? What are your main storylines? For example, going into tomorrow night, we have the Cavaliers coming up. I don't know if they're going to play their starters. I don't know if the Sixers are going to play their starters. I would expect maybe Embiid and Harden and Tucker to maybe play a game at the end just to kind of get the rhythm going. I don't know, though. I don't know. But what are your expectations for tomorrow night with the Cavs? What are you looking for, and who are you looking to stand out?
Yeah, one of the major things I'm looking for is something that stood out to me in a major way last night was how much better the off-ball movement looked, how much the quick trigger catch and shoot, specifically from guys like Tobias Harris, like Matisse Thybulle, guys that we've been screaming to shoot more, and just the motion. There was so much more motion, so much more off-ball movement. If Joel and James step back on the court, I need that to continue around them. That's something that both Embiid and Harden, just in their nature, are much more kind of isolation based, take their time, evaluate things, take a couple dribbles before they get into their set. I still need the guys around him to continue that urgency, to work off ball. And Doc Rivers even compared it to the Nuggets, how hard guys work outside of Jokic to get open. They should be benefiting from the gravity of these guys, not just taking it for granted and letting them do their thing. So that's a major storyline I'm looking for throughout the year. And I would like to see signs of it in the first time that they step on the court in preseason is the guys off ball continuing to do the work, do the dirty work, and really just revitalize this offense.
It's interesting, man. We've seen in spurts over the last couple of years, we've seen that urgency that, oh my gosh, this team is popping off the TV, but can they do it consistently? I think that's a great point. Yesterday, for example, we out-rebounded the Nets 56-43. 13 more rebounds, and we had 20 steals as a team. I know it got sloppy in the third quarter. It's one of those preseason games, but still, I mean, when it really mattered, we probably had a good quality 10 to 12 steals, and we had 6 combined with Thybulle, Melton, and, Paul Reed had a cut. These guys were just in there. You saw the urgency from the first tip of the game. And I agree, man. What will this team look like on a daily basis? You add in Trez, I love the energy, and I think that can really be a staple of this team. It's what we've been missing. It's what we missed in the playoffs last year, and I feel like championship teams, that DNA, it's built early in a season. You can usually tell, what teams are mentally strong. And, yeah, man, I want to see that continue.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of excitement around this team right now. That's something I just think is a major focus of mine is, don't let the identity is going to change with James Harden and Joel Embiid joining it, but don't let that off-ball movement and that desire stop from all these supporting cast guys, because doing that work off the ball and making sure that things are right for them, that's when the team becomes complete. And I think that they've become over reliant on the pass of just like standing around, let Embiid do his thing. And for that to stop would go a far way, increasing this team's chances.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think Joel and James and PJ will get in during the preseason? Do you think it's important, or is it like football where it doesn't matter? What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think they'll play a little bit, specifically because of like PJ, it'll be his first minutes on the Sixer. And I think there just should be some sort of on-court like moment against new competition, because it is still a little different from just going against your same guys in training camp all the time. Like it just a little bit of a shade of a new something new to go against. So I would like to see them get at least one game of work. I'm not putting a bunch of stock in it either way. If they go out there and look terrible, I'm not going to be up in arms. But I think just to shake off some rust, give them some live game action, we should run them for at least a couple minutes.
Yeah, no, I agree. Shout out to the members in here as well. Merksy, what's going on? I saw Connor earlier on. Shout out to all the channel members. Everybody supporting. They're chiming in, giving their thoughts. We had a couple people on the phone lines. They dropped off. Don't know why. But yeah, man, as we continue to do this show, hopefully we'll get more calls. But yeah, man, that's really all I got. Like, that's the recap of this game. I thought the Sixers showed, an impressive performance early on, and they did what they had to do, right? That's how the NBA season is. You go in, you get your business done, and you get out. And I don't know. I thought it was a great start. I thought they were off on the right foot, and given all the high intensity, the emotion and all that, I thought we handled our business pretty well. And I saw personally everything that I needed to see and more. There was nothing more I could have asked for. There's nothing I can complain about. That was just a great team win. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And to talk about like the depth that this team has, think about guys like Shake Milton and Georges Niang were 6 men on this roster like as recently as last year. And to now look at like them still being on the roster and leapfrog by like 4 guys is just a testament to like how much the roster around everybody has been built up. So like we've kind of talked about throughout this, like competition is an awesome thing in sports. It brings out the best in the guys that truly want it and truly are the best out of it. So I think that's an awesome sign to have all this depth, all these guys really competing and bring out the best in each other. And like you mentioned earlier, like this is the most complete team in the Joel Embiid era. And we're going to see if that is the missing ingredient.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And shout out to everybody once again in the chat. Hit that like button, man. Be sure following Sean on Twitter and over on the Pick Swap Pod and following his articles as well on heavy.com. I mean, this guy is doing everything, man. If you're not up to date with his stuff, like, what are you doing, man? I mean, this guy, you're one of the next beat reporters. I'm calling it right now, man.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it is fun writing all day. It's nice to be able to wake up and just think about the Sixers for 24 hours in a day. So I really can't complain at all.
Shout out to Sean, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Once again, this is presented by Manscaped. Get yourself the Lawnmower 4.0. Clean yourself up nice. It's getting to be that time of the year. You got to keep the girls happy, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Yeah, we'll be back. Look, if you're interested in doing this again next game, let me know. Sixers on to take the Cavs, man. Sixers get the dub against the Brooklyn Nets. And they beat Ben Simmons. Yes, I said it. They beat Ben Simmons. We can finally get rid of that now. 127-108. He's the same player. We're better off. Shouts to everybody in the chat, man. Appreciate everyone coming through. And Philly Take with RB. Hit that like button, subscribe. Check us out on all platforms. You guys have a great night. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.